log them to this clock, the local clock, right? And then we can trigger all our signals. So we have way more things that we need to consider there. So even though our synchronization is better than a nanosecond, we actually find out that we still had a jitter of about 1.4 nanoseconds, meaning that there could be some room for improvement, but that is still pretty good for what we are doing right now. And this is kind of the characterization that we do. If you guys have heard about the Allen deviation, that's something that kind of tell us how two clocks are drifting from each other. So we do calculate that to verify that, well, two things. One, that we are still in the nanosecond regime if we just make one single measurement. But another thing that this plot shows us is that it follows a nice linear behavior of 1 over the square root of tau. So that means the more you average, you know that the statistic gets better, and you can find very well if you're trying to average a number, right? So the more numbers you average, the more precise your mean is going to be. And then you can show that you're just limited by the statistics, and then you don't have any other source of noise or technical noise that you will have to compensate or to fix. So this is kind of the characterization that we are doing. How Paul was saying, we can do some polarization. Something very nice that we found is that we can send, a photon of light that we can polarize in one of the two ends, either in Stony Brook and BNL, and we send it out the fiber. And something that we could be afraid of is that maybe it was a very noisy channel in the case that we would totally depolarize the light, but actually that's not the case. It remains the polarization. It maintains the light to be polarized. It just doesn't maintain it in the polarized that we send it to, right? In formal terms, that's known like it's just a unitary rotation. So all that we have to do is to compensate for that. And that is not hard to do. You can always use what is called wave plates. You probably saw them in the lab, right? Like there are half-wave plates and quarter-wave plates that you can just rotate the polarization in any of your axes. The difficult task is that this rotation that you had to do changes again at the time of the day, right? So pretty much you have to do a different rotation during different intervals of time. And that's pretty much what we are characterizing. So I had a nice, I can show you that nice animation over there. For example, I can show, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Poincare sphere. That's a way to show like the different polarization of your qubits. But imagine that I do want to define my photons to be here in this horizontal, right? I want to be my photons to be horizontally polarized. And then what this figure shows is that imagine that your dot is just like it starts randomly, and that's kind of the beginning of the animation. Maybe I can start it again. And then at some point, you're going to see when we can activate our polarization compensation mechanism. And then you're going to see how this wandering, dot that is not where it's supposed to be, we can bring it back to horizontal, pretty much to be to where we want to be. So you see here at the beginning, it's kind of wandering around. We have these three numbers that define, it's kind of like the three axes of this vector, like X, Y, and Z. And what we want is that this blue curve to be 1. Pretty much imagine the blue curve is like the Y-axis. So you see it's randomly, it's all over the place, and boom, we can apply our correction, and then we just bring it back to where we want it. And this is the kind of thing that we had to do. Pretty much we just had to make this measurement, once in a while in our network, and we had to correct it. So that means that we had to figure out what kind of rotation our fiber is doing in our qubits, and then had to compensate for it. I like the term that Dimitrios, a colleague of us from the Computer Science Initiative, used, that is like self-healing. This has to be all built in our platform, so we could eventually run this 24/7, right? And I like just a plot here that, so this is our saying, like 3 parameters that I was mentioning. And you can see how this drift over time, but it's very nice. I like this region over here where we can kick our self-healing, well, it's not self-healing here, it's only just healing protocol every 15 minutes. So this is a scan of 8 hours, and this is how much our polarization read for that time. And every 15 minutes we can kick it, and you say that it brings it back, but it starts decaying again. 15 minutes ago, we do it again, and it fixed. So this kind of measurement is telling us how often we have to do this, right? And if you see this nice area that I intentionally showing you, it's 3:30 in the morning. So that's obviously the best time of the day, right? There is nobody around, there's nobody driving cars. But once you start hitting the morning, 5:30 a.m., things get very ugly. So that really tells us that, for example, in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning, we could have like decent coherence, for like 10 minutes. So we don't have to kick our protocol to compensate too often. But then if we go later, like 9 in the morning, and there is a lot of traffic, we're going to have to do this probably like every 3 minutes. So this is kind of important, very important, and that's why we're trying to acquire this information. And that's why we want to do self-healing. We want the system to measure how bad it is, and then start fixing it. And then by itself, it should decide, like how long it takes to fix it, and let it free run again. And it should all of this, without any human help, for saying it somehow. And that's it pretty much. So I think this is what I trying to develop all of this technique to be able to do quantum and reality. This is all like the classical or instrumentation things that we need to address. Something that I didn't go into detail is that we can control all our electronics, all our quantum devices and classical devices from just one single computer, and this is what we call the quantum network control panel. That is a Python-based, how we call it that, like panel protocol. So we can do all of this hopefully with just sitting from one computer, either from a Stony Brook or a BNL, right? And then what we're gonna do next is to repeat this experiment that we were mentioning, and this is called the Hahnemann-Mandel, which what it means is that when you interfere two photons, and when they are exactly on top of each other, you mean they arrive exactly at the same time, and they are identical photons, in frequency, in polarization, in all the degrees of freedom that you could imagine, they're gonna have quantum interference, and they're gonna bunch together. And going into much details, pretty much this is what you want to see to demonstrate that you have like quantum coherence, right? You can kind of change the delay between them, and only when they're exactly in the same place, you're gonna see this thing.
Julian, just comments from me, because I didn't see this long distance results yet. Can we discuss Mr. on the line after the discussion, because I can have some comments on that.
Yeah. So we were able to do this experiment, about almost 2 years ago, but it was all done what we call like CW, that's continuous wave, so that pretty much is just sending a lot of light from Stony Brook to BNL. And we were always like somebody sitting in the Stony Brook side in front of the function generators, in front of the computer, like controlling things, and even like by hand changing the polarization and the amplitude of our fields. And it was very slow and tedious, right? Something that we did recently, it was what I was mentioning, the control panel, that now we can just do everything from the computer, and we can pulse, right? So it's not this continuous wave anymore, but actually we can send synchronized pulses, and we can do it independently for all of them. We can control our atomic system, which I kind of show here, but these are like levels in our rubidium atoms that we use, and you can see the 4 lasers that we can have to synchronize to the right frequencies that we want, and that we can do what I was calling earlier, the frequency conversion, taking these photons that are synchronized to the atoms, and we want to convert them to be synchronized to the optical fiber so they can travel for them. And then we can do all of this fully controlled. And now that we have this polarization compensation, so we are moving into repeating this kind of experiment, right? This Hahnemann-Mandel of HOM interference, quantum interference between two photons. 158 kilometers apart. And that's just one little, small part of all this like quantum network, right? So you remember one thing is the quantum repeater, but that's just locally in one single device. We had to make this interconnect between different nodes far away, and that required those two layers that I was mentioning, the quantum enabling layer, which is to be able to preserve coherence from very far, and the other one to have this control layer, like kind of a classical network who is going to be enabling the quantum network. But it requires much better synchronization than the internet that we have today. So these are all the things that we have to develop to make this a reality. Oh, there we go. This is a picture of almost all of the people working in the lab. This is a picture we took recently, between everyone working at Brookhaven and the group at Stony Brook. We're missing about 5 people in this picture. It's too sad that we were not there. Like many of them are here. Many of them, sorry, are in the conference here. So it was too sad to meet you guys. And then we actually use many devices from a company called QNet, who is based in Brooklyn. And we actually have a good communication and collaborations with them. They actually provide 3 devices of the experiments that we're running right now. I know Gabriela probably mentioned this to you. We are like the very first ever, experimental facility in the country to offer, quantum networking service. We actually opened it about